Okay, so when I decided I was going to present in the community slot today on a personal development topic, I kind of already had an idea as to what I wanted to talk about, or at least a rough idea. And I wanted to try and share some of the things that I discovered during my own personal journey from the last probably 18 months or so. And in particular around how, as I tried to change my mindset to be sort of more of a positive outlook, the importance of developing my personal skills in that process. But as I started to create my slide deck, I realized it's a bit difficult. It's quite a dry subject to try and talk about. And I'm not really an expert in any of those areas, so it's quite difficult to sit here and talk to you about that. So instead, I've tried to put it into the context of my own journey. So I'm basically going to share my story from the last 18 months or highlights of it, and hopefully then show you just why I think it is important to invest in your personal skills. So this is my story. This is finding my why, who I am, and what I can offer. So just briefly, for anybody that doesn't know me, I work at VMware. I'm a senior consultant in the Northern EMEA PSO team. And as of last Saturday, I've been with the team now for 4 years. And I focus primarily on the automation and orchestration technologies, but I came from an infrastructure background originally, and even before that from end user support, so I've got quite a diverse background. And away from work, I'm passionate about football, at least when it can actually happen and there's no lockdown. I'm a season ticket holder at my local team, Gillingham, and I actually play football for a ladies veterans team, which is known as Vintage Ancorians, because we're, vintage age and not old. So my story begins in 2018, and I'm in Barcelona. I'm working as part of the hands-on labs at VMworld. And at this point in time, I've been in my job for around 2.5 years. And based on the feedback I'm getting from my customers, my manager, my peers, I'm doing a good job. Everything's going well. But I'm finding that I'm starting to get a bit bored. And I don't really know why, but the buzz factor's gone out of the job, and I can't figure out what it is that's gone. So I feel like I'm stuck in a rut. I'm not progressing, and I can't see what the future is actually going to hold and how it's going to change. I can't see that there's any progression path. And while I'm out in Barcelona and working in the hands-on labs area, one of the members of staff had arranged for Robin Matlock, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at VMware, to come and speak to the female members of staff in the hands-on labs team. She was just going to share her story and focus primarily on, what it's like as a female in the male-dominated industry. And I'll admit, this is the kind of session I'd normally avoid because I don't actually like being singled out for the fact that I'm female and the industry is predominantly male. All I want is to blend in and just be known for the work I do. And I also don't really subscribe to the idea that to promote equality and diversity, you need a group of females all getting together with other females talking about how to make the world better. It doesn't really do anything for me. So I plan to skip the session because it's the end of my shift, and I'm going to go out to dinner with my friends instead. But as I'm attempting to exit the conference center via one of the side exits, Kim Delgado actually spots me attempting to leave and reminds me that the session is about to start and points to where it's going to happen in a couple of minutes. So I'm kind of stuck now because I can't realistically leave the conference center and skip the session. Now, Kim knows that I was there literally a minute or two before it's going to happen. So I end up attending. And it actually turns out to be a bit of a turning point. I'm quite glad really now that Kim did spot me and guilted me into attending. So Robin shared her story and it was quite interesting. And she raises a point that she'd recently come across about a study that has shown that females will wait until they can tick 75% of the boxes on a job application requirement list before they'll consider even applying for the job. And that men generally will wait till they can only tick 25% of the boxes, be comfortable that they can blag the rest of the requirements in the interview, and they'll apply. Now, it's obviously a very stereotypical thing to say, and there'll be men that fall into the 75% category and women that fall into the 25% category as well. But the study had shown the majority of the females fell into this 70% category. And I was sat there and I suddenly realized that that's me. I do that. I wouldn't have even applied for my current job at VMworld, if I hadn't been introduced to the company. And then I went to the interview really because I wanted the experience, because I wasn't happy in my current role. I didn't realistically think I was going to get the job. It's just that slim possibility that maybe they decided I was good enough and they'd hire me. And then I realized that I'm still doing it because I'm now thinking that there's no progression path and that I've got no chance for promotion in my current job. Yet I haven't even raised the subject with my manager because I don't think I tick all the requirements on the box. So I've just dismissed it. So now I've got a problem. because I'm too scared to ask my manager about promotion. So to put it into context, all of our one-to-ones to this date have been nice, polite, friendly conversations over the phone. It's what I'd later term as fluffy conversations. There's no substance to them. There's no real purpose to it. My manager's basically forcing me to have a one-to-one because I wouldn't bother otherwise, because I don't see that there's any benefit from them. And so we meet once a month. We talk about, what the football results were at the weekend, what I'm currently working on, maybe where I'm planning to go on holiday, but nothing else. So now I'm scared about what his reaction will be if I do actually raise the question of promotion to him. So just like the quote on the slide, I'm thinking, what happens if he just basically shoots me down immediately? What if he just tells me no? What if he goes silent on the other end of the phone and just doesn't say anything when I raise it? Or what if he just laughs at me? It's all negative thoughts. Not once have I actually stopped to think that my manager probably has a lot more respect for me than that, and that he might actually have a positive thing to say. It's all the negative outcomes, nothing else. And so I come back from Barcelona and I start debating this in my own head as to whether or not I should actually ask the question to my manager. And it's stuck there. I can't get rid of it. I just cannot get over whether or not I should raise the question. And in the end, I decide that it's driving me insane. I've just got to ask him. Even if it turns out to be a negative response, I have to know the answer. So my next one-to-one, which is still a phone call, I pluck up the courage and I literally blurt out before my manager can interrupt me along the lines of that I want to talk about promotion, and I'm not saying I should have it now, not saying I deserve it now, but I want to know where I am and how to get there and what it looks like. And to my immense relief, the response from my manager is really positive. He says something along the lines of, I'm so glad that you actually decided to raise that. Said, I've been trying to open this kind of conversation with you and ask you where you think you're going for so long now. And literally every time I raise the subject, you slam the door close down the conversation and clam up. He said, I'm so happy you feel you want to actually talk about it. Let's arrange to meet in person in the office. We'll sit down for a couple of hours. We'll go through the career matrix and we'll figure out a plan of action from there as to where we need to go. And so we do. So we meet in the office a couple of weeks later and we sit down and we start going through the career ladder. So within VMware and PSO in particular, there's a very well-defined career structure as to the different requirements for each of the job roles and each of the different grades. And as we're going through it, it becomes quite clear that you can split all of the requirements into basically two categories as far as I'm concerned. Anything that is related to the technical side of things, so delivering customer projects, keeping my skills up to date with certifications, delivering across multiple different products, I'm ticking the boxes, nailing it, no problems whatsoever, nothing that needs working on. Anything that's related to the wider community piece around personal development, around sharing my knowledge, giving back to the community, getting involved in initiatives that promote the VMware and PSO brands, not really doing, barely scratching the surface, ticking maybe one or two boxes. And I say to my manager, well, VMware pays me to be the technical expert. You send me out to customers who pay for my time as a subject matter expert. So why would I invest my time in this personal development bits and pieces? It's not what you pay me for. Even my bonus is mainly based on what I do as I term the day job, delivering the customer projects. And he tells me that the world has changed from my viewpoint, that now what I consider to do the day job just isn't valid anymore. And that you have to be showing that you're doing more than just delivering projects, particularly within VMware. And you have to have the sense of giving back and going above and beyond. And what I consider to be optional things really aren't, that they're part of the day job and I should be doing them already. And as we're discussing the various bits and pieces, he also tells me a few home truths. So the first home truth I learned is I need to delve down on my cynical side. Now, I'll admit, I'm an extremely cynical person. It's genetic, I can't help it. And I don't always take the time to think before I allow that cynicism to just flow out of my mouth. And he brings up an example from a little while ago at that point, which was a feedback form that we used to have to submit, a check-in form in an internal system, before we really sort of moved to the monthly one-to-ones. And at the time I'd submitted this form, I was in a particularly negative place. I was on a project in the middle of nowhere in Ireland. The customer wasn't really interested in what I was doing. It wasn't really in my chosen technology area, and I didn't want to do the project. I felt like I'd kind of been forced into doing it because, circumstances required it. And so I'm in quite a negative place anyway, and I just allow my cynicism to have free reign over this feedback form. And I hit the submit button. I think nothing else really of it. And my manager points out to me that I need to take the time to think about the audience of who's going to receive that feedback form before I allow that cynicism to have free reign over it. He points out that those forms are seen by senior managers who may not actually know me as an individual. And all they're necessarily going to remember me by now and associate my name with is that negativity that I've just allowed to flow onto the page. And he reminds me, is that really what you want people to think for you about you? What you want them to remember you by, that you've just left this cynical mark all the way down the page? Then there's a second home truth. So as we're going through the requirements and we're talking about some of the things that I need to work on, the subject of getting a VCDX comes up. And at this point in time, I'm completely against it. I just fail to see what benefit it's going to give me for the amount of effort it's going to require to get it. And my manager has a completely different viewpoint to me. And as he's trying to convince me to see his side of the argument, I get to the point where I'm just fed up arguing. I'm getting bored and I just can't be bothered to argue anymore. So I say, yeah, okay, fine, thinking we'll just move on. What I didn't realize is my manager has voodoo skills and he was reading me like a book. And he knew that although I was saying yes to him, my body language was telling him something completely different. Or as he puts it, your body language is screaming the complete opposite. And I say it's voodoo skills because we hadn't really met very often in person at this point in time. So to be able to read me in that way was quite a surprise to me. And it never happened previously. So I'd obviously had to be a bit more careful in the future. And then we move on to start talking about whether or not I know what my strengths are and what I bring as an individual to the team. And I say to my manager, well, there's nothing really exceptional about me. I'm good at my job. Yeah, okay, I'm probably above average in terms of my technical skills. But I guess the only thing that really sort of sets me apart is the fact that I get my head down and I work damn hard to deliver the job. And he tells me that I need to get that idea out of my head. He says that you're brilliant. And it's not just because, as you put it, you work damn hard. And that if you can't see that about yourself, then how are you ever going to get other people to see it about you as well? So as I'm driving home from the office that day, which happens to be in Staines, I'm going back around the M25, and as often happens when I'm in the car, the autopilot kicks in and my brain starts to wander. And I realised that I've heard something similar before. So when I was working in my previous employer, on my last role, just before I moved to join VMware, we used to have to do a yearly check-in, effectively, as part of our feedback for our appraisals. And you'd ask people you were working with to fill in a feedback form. And somebody I'd been working with, who I hadn't been working with for very long at that point, put in there as feedback for me that year that I had all the talent and ability to achieve anything I wanted to. But if I didn't allow people to actually see just how good I was, I'd struggle to achieve my goals. And it suddenly made me realise that my manager's telling me something quite similar in just a slightly different way. So this is now two independent people, two different times, two different scenarios, telling me something quite similar. That, I'm talented, that I have this ability and that I'm not fulfilling it. And it kind of made me wonder whether maybe there's some truth to it and that, I just couldn't see it about myself. So for the next couple of weeks, we pulled together a personal development plan and an action plan. And we agreed that the most logical place to start is probably to look at understanding my strengths because, it's quite clear that I don't see what I can bring to the table. And my manager suggests that I get something, some kind of profiling done, something like a Myers-Briggs to understand, just what my personality type is, what I bring to the table, and who I am as an individual. But it turns out VMware don't actually offer Myers-Briggs at all. They use a different profiling system called HBDI. And the way they do this is through a course called Original Genius. So although this course is run internally inside VMware, the HBDI model is actually industry-wide, and the company that actually delivers the tailored training course for VMware goes out and does this for other organizations as well. So it's completely available externally. And the course covers a few different things. So it covers the principle of why and the golden circle, which I've been through on previous training courses. And it also covers an idea called the super chickens theory. And if you've not heard of that one previously, I recommend you go and look at the TED Talk by Margaret Heffernan. There's a video on, I think it's YouTube, where it covers it. It's about 13 minutes in length, but it's quite interesting. Only the first 5 minutes or so is sufficient to get sort of the overview of the principle. But the first thing that really stuck with me from the course was something that they termed as whole brain thinking, which was this HBDI model. And the idea is that everybody has a different way of thinking, and that based on your preference as to how you think, you sit within one of these colours on the grid. And apologies for anyone who's colourblind, you can also see them listed on the left of the screen as well, in case you can't tell the difference between the colours. And so they say that based on your preferred approach, you'll fall into one of these colours, and then you have that dominant method of thinking. And you can see that each of the colours has a different kind of personality associated with it, or a different way of thinking. Whether it's that you're focused on the bigger picture and experimental, or whether you're quite structured. And when you're on the course, they play a game with you. And basically they set out all these different coloured cards on the tables in the room. And each of the cards has a word written on it. And the colours match back to the colours on this grid. And they don't tell you exactly what the colours mean at the time. They just ask you to go around the room and pick up what you consider to be words that describe you or you'd associate yourself with. And they ask you to pick up 5 cards originally. And then they ask you to rank those 5 cards in order of preference as to which you think is most like you, and to just keep the top 3. And based on your top 3 cards, they lay down a mat on the floor which has this same grid on it, the same colours. And they ask you to go and stand on the colour that you have the majority of the cards for. Or if you're quite well split between the colours, you end up on the borders between them. And so when we did this on the training course, I came out as having 2 green cards and 1 blue. And as I start to explain what the different colours actually mean and the traits and the behaviours that they're associated with, I start looking through the list for the green and the blues. And I'm thinking, yeah, this describes me. I quite like that. That's probably what I'd choose if I just saw this grid on its own. If someone asked me where I'd sit, I'd probably say I sat in the green and the blue. Definitely not in the yellow or the red. It's not really me. So I'd picked industrious, controlled, and enthusiastic as my top 3 cards. So 2 greens, 1 blue. Which means I'm predominantly left side of the table. I'm in the rational side of the brain, which made sense to me. I'm very fact driven. I'm very logical in how I think. And if I look down the green side, I'm very disciplined and I'm very risk averse as well. There's not really anything in the yellow and the red sections that really apply to me. I don't really think in the big picture and the strategic side of things. I would never describe myself as imaginative, and I wouldn't describe myself as being a particularly emotional person either. So they didn't really apply to me. So it was all making sense. And they explained on the course that you have effectively a light and a dark side to your personality. So based on where you sit in the grid, your light side is the skills and the style sections of each of those colours. So that's what you see about yourself and what you see about other people within that colour if you sit within it. So they explain that the people we find easiest to communicate with are often the ones that share the same traits as us. So they sit within the same colour or the same dominance of the colours. So for me, I find it easiest to communicate people that are like me, that sit in the blue and the greens. So they tend to be technical people. They tend to be fascinated by the nuts and bolts of things. And it's less likely that they'll be interested in thinking strategically, being of the more architect mindset, if you like. And they also explain that as well as having a light side, you have a dark side. And that's the canopy section at the bottom of those quadrants. So for everything we see good about ourselves, we have the most difficulty communicating with people who sit diagonally opposite us on the grid. And that's because they see our dark side. So I see myself as being very fact-driven, very logical, very precise. Somebody else might see me as being quite rigid or quite short-term focused, and the fact that I'm limited by the need for always wanting proof before I'll accept something. I don't trust my gut. I won't just take a risk and make a decision based on whether or not it feels right. I need the facts and figures to back it up before I'll agree to it. So the reason for bringing this up is that they say that the most productive teams have people who represent each of the 4 colours on the grid, because you each bring something different to the table, you bring a different way of thinking, and so you achieve the best results. But given we struggle to communicate with people that are diagonally opposite us on the grid, we only see their dark side, they only see our dark side. We need to learn to understand how they approach the subjects differently to us and find ways of finding a middle ground so that we don't just see their dark side, we don't jump to assumptions about them. Find ways of communicating so that we can work together in a better method. So this course is proving to be quite a truly enlightening event for me. So at this point, I can actually start to understand how this all fits together. I can process the information I'm seeing, all these facts and figures, this method of how my brain thinks is making sense to me. I grasp the concept. And I think, as I say, I can see where I fit in that blue-green side of the grid. And I'd actually agreed with my manager that I'd sign up for a more extensive report as part of this. So the training course would give you the basic overview of how the model worked, those 4 quadrants and the different colors and how you communicate. But the more extensive report would actually give you a profile and show you exactly how you fitted into the grid, as well as an extensive report that says, exactly how you're likely to think and different exercises that you could look at to improve your communication styles, for example. So the real light bulb moment came for me when I got this report back. So this is me. This is how my brain thinks on the screen. And you can see that I am completely blue-green dominant. And a slight surprise from the training course, I'm actually more blue than I am green. And now I look back at it, yeah, absolutely. I can see there's lots of things in the blue category that apply to me, including my love of spreadsheets. And there's actually 2 different diagrams that you see on there. So the solid line is my normal thinking style. When I'm not under any pressure, that's just how generally my brain processes stuff. And the dotted line is my style under stress. So you can see in my case, they're pretty similar. The only real difference is that when I'm under pressure or under stress, I go even more fact driven and even less emotional focused. So the emotion goes out of the situation completely, and I'm looking at those processes, those logical, rational steps I can do to work through to figure out the answer. And I suddenly realized that this backs up something that I'd had done as well on a previous training course where I'd got an emotional intelligence report completed or an EIQ report. And the results of that had shown that I scored very highly in the problem solving areas and in the reality testing. All that backs up the blue-green. I'd also scored very lowly in the emotional awareness and emotional self-expression. Well, that's the red. Yeah, that makes sense because I don't score very highly in there. So now everything's pointing in the same direction. I've got 2 different profiles, 2 different methods, and it's coming out in the same way. I can start to understand what I'm seeing. I can start to process it. And it makes sense because they say that your brain processes information from your most dominant color round to your least dominant color. So for in my case, as you can see on the screen, I'd go from a blue to the green to the yellow to the red. So the emotional side of it is the bare, last resort for me. If I can't find any other answer to it, I'll consider what my gut thinks. But the facts and the figures are the most important part to me. And so there was one other area of the training course that really made a big impact on me. And that was the idea of small changes. So small changes wasn't a concept they'd come up with just for this training course. But the example they use on the course is the British cycling team, or Team GB from the Olympics, and how they use the idea of marginal gains to get a competitive edge to fulfill their biggest period of success. And the idea is quite simple, that they basically didn't look to make changes to the cyclist training routine in terms of big changes, or recruit different kinds of cyclists. They looked at what they were already doing and looked to see if they could find small improvements that would lead to marginal gains. And the idea is that doing 100 things 1% better will actually lead to a better result than doing just one thing 100% better. Because it's easier to commit to doing those lots of small changes rather than doing one massive change. And so in the case of the cycling team, they looked at things like using an expert to come in and teach the cyclists how to wash their hands properly. The principle being that they would then reduce the amount of time the cyclists couldn't train at full speed or couldn't train full stop because of illnesses like colds. And then they did a similar thing by taking a team of chefs with them whenever they travelled. So they knew the cyclists were going to get a nutritious meal every single time and reduce the risk from things like food poisoning affecting their training schedule. And although the small changes on their own don't make much of a difference, if you start to add more and more of them over time, the results start to increase exponentially in terms of the impact it has. And so you start to see a massive impact from just these small changes. And I realized that this was something that I could actually do, that I would be able to commit to just making these little changes in how I approach things today. Maybe find 1 or 2 skills that I could improve on, 1 or 2 opportunities that I could take advantage of. And it could lead to some bigger results over time if I could do it. So now the next task was basically to figure out where to start. So the first area I identified was trust. So having taken that first step to have that open and honest conversation with my manager, I decided that I needed to continue that process. I needed to trust him. And to be fair to my manager, there was never a trust issue on his side of the equation. It was always on mine. I don't trust people easily. I'm quite guarded, or I can be quite guarded at times. I haven't quite figured out exactly why that is. So that was the first thing I decided I was going to work on. I needed to find a way to be more trusting and learn to trust other people better, starting with my manager. But I also needed to put more trust in my colleagues. At this point, I tried going it alone. I was a team player, but I would do kind of the bare minimum that was required. And so I could be quite guarded about how much I allowed people to see or to know on occasions. So I needed to change that about myself. If I was going to achieve what I wanted, if I was going to achieve my goals, then I needed to trust that other people were going to be there to help me if I actually asked them to do so. And this was something that was quite new to me because at this point in my career, promotion had always been something that you just got given. You met the requirements, you got the grade. It wasn't something you went and asked for, or that you had to go and ask for. And my last employer as well, we had frequent reorganizations. So towards the end of my time there, I was getting a new line manager every 6 months. So there was never any point in investing the time and effort in getting to know them, in building a trust and a relationship. Because by the end of the appraisal year, they'd gone and you'd start again with somebody new. So this was all going to be brand new to me. And I guess I was a bit like that immature teenager in that I was suddenly discovering all the good and the bad things that can happen when you actually open your mouth and speak up. So this was to be my first small change. I'd like to gradually build my trust with my manager and then expand it to other people in my team as well, and then the wider community. The second small change I decided to try was to say yes to more things and not to instantly say no or it's not for me. So being very cynical, it has a tendency to make me quite negative. And I found that I'm just dismissing ideas or dismissing opportunities because all I can see is those possible negative outcomes. I can't see beyond what might happen if I say yes to it, what people might think about me if I did attempt something and it didn't work out, the paranoia, if you like. So I needed to try and, as my manager suggested, dial down that cynical side. I needed to try and open up opportunities I'd normally say no to. And I decided to try and use an approach that I picked up from a previous training course called Authentic Leading Women. And although that training course was run purely for females on that occasion, they also do the same course just for male audiences and also for mixed audiences as well. And the approach didn't have a funky name as far as I remember. I just remember it as A, B, C, D, E. And basically the A stands for the activating event. So this is the thing that is causing the process to start. And this could be a decision you're trying to make now, or it could be something that you've come across in the past and you're reviewing back to see what you could have done differently. And then the beliefs, B is your beliefs and the self-talk. So this is that negative voice in your head. And in my head, it's quite a loud voice. It's telling you all that bad stuff. It's telling you what's going to happen if you say yes to it, how it's going to, end up in a massive heap on the floor, everything bad possibly that you could ever imagine could happen. And all the assumptions you're jumping to, that's what comes into the B stage. And then the C is the consequences. So what did all those bad things that you thought was going to happen, what's the outcome going to be? What's the consequences going to end up to be? And how's it going to end up making you feel? So it's important to understand at this point, you're making an awful lot of assumptions as you're going through. So this is your instant gut reaction to what you think is actually happening or has happened. And then the D stands for debate, dispute, and discard. And the way they explain this on the course is you're basically sitting now around a table with a group of friends or family, and they're all really positive people. There's no negativity about them whatsoever. And you're explaining what's happened through the A, B, and C stages and how you're feeling. And their role is they're telling you that, you're basically debating every assumption that you've possibly made during the B and the C stage that was negative. They're disputing the consequences that the consequences that come out of it and the assumptions that you've made at that point and how it's making you feel. And they're telling you to discard all that negativity. So they're helping you to see what the reality of the situation is or could be, rather than just what you've instantly thought it's going to be and assumed it's going to be. And then the E stands for the effects. And this is basically the outcome, the overall effect of having gone through that A, B, C, D, E process. And it could still be negative at this point because obviously not every opportunity, every possibility is going to end up with a positive outcome. But the chances are it's going to be more positive than when you first started. And it'll be much more fact-driven than if you just made the assumptions at the start of it. So for me in particular, the D and E stages of this process were going to be really key because I have a real tendency to live in the B and the C part of this process. I can't see past the negativity and the possible outcomes, and I'll jump to an awful lot of conclusions about what it's actually going to lead to. So if I could get into the habit of going through the D and the E stages, it could make a real impact on me and could lead to me actually thinking about taking opportunities that previously I just discarded without even thinking about them. And that could lead to some bigger results for me in the longer term. So now I've got to the point where I know my strengths. I've got my whole brain thinking profile, my HBDI profile. I've got my emotional intelligence report that I've had done. And I've also got a character strengths signature survey results that come as part of the original Genius course. And I've identified what I want to work on in terms of my small changes. Those 2 changes are going to make of trust and trying to say yes. And at this point, I've also undertaken some background reading as well. So I've gone off and I've been looking to try and discover what that buzz factor was about my job, the reason why I continue to get up each morning and go to work, and then the reason why it's missing. And I figured out that it was related to the problem solving side of things. So it's maybe not a surprise when you look back at my profile that that's, what it came out to be. But I realized actually it wasn't just about fixing problems. It was about fixing it for other people. The buzz comes from helping other people be able to do more as a result of that problem being fixed, no matter how small it is. And the reason it was missing out of my job was because I got to the point where I was already fixing 75% of the common problems that I get to go to see as part of doing customer projects. So there was less of a challenge there. There was less problems to solve or less unique problems to solve. Now, all of that took me a few months to figure out. And now it's got to the point where it's time to actually start taking action. So I've got everything written down on paper that I need to do. And now I need to start going out and living what I'm preaching to myself. And it's slow progress. I have to take it one step at a time. And it really is baby steps to start with. So just like the little girl on the slide who's learning to ride the bike, I had to try and find a balance. I had to find my balance between doing my day job of going and delivering customer projects and figuring out the development opportunities that were open to me and the ones that I should take and the ones that I could potentially take without affecting the delivery of projects. I also had to learn to control my speed and direction to try and stay on course. So there were too many good things that were out there once you start to find them appearing on your radar. And you're tempted to go off and chase after absolutely everything. And you end up going off on a tangent too often and forgetting what it is you're actually trying to achieve. So I needed to try and learn to stay focused, stay going straight ahead where I was heading towards my goal. And perhaps most importantly, I needed to learn how to break. I needed to learn to not take on too much. When you get offered all these opportunities, it's too tempting to say yes to everything. And you end up realizing when you look back that you've said yes to about 15 things and they're all expecting something at the same time. And you just don't have enough hours in the day to be able to do it. And so you end up not committing to any of them, the 100% effort that you would normally do otherwise. So I had to learn to just not say yes to absolutely everything. I had to learn not to go to the other extreme and to be a bit picky about what I was going to say yes to and being honest when I couldn't commit the effort or the time to something. So I started off by picking off the easy targets on my personal development plan. Nice simple things like going off and learning about a process that would affect my job and give me an understanding of the bigger picture where I fitted in with my day job. And then I made a commitment that I was going to start to take my one-to-ones with my manager more seriously. So there was going to be no more fluffy conversations. I was going to prepare in advance of anything that I wanted to raise. And I wasn't just going to hide anymore. If I wanted to know something, I was going to raise it and ask the question. And then likewise, anything that my manager asked me to do, I was going to make a note of and actually agree to follow up on. No more just saying yes and thinking, if I just don't tell him about it, don't remind him about it, he'll forget about it and I won't have to do anything about it. I was going to be open and honest with him. And as I realized over time that actually I prefer to have face-to-face meetings with my manager. And that's not an easy thing to organise when my manager has a number of people that he's responsible for. And we're a distributed team as well. And the job requires an awful lot of travel. So I actually asked my manager to consider making just one session each quarter a face-to-face session. And I found that it was a conscious effort to go and ask for that because as I'm trying to build that trust with him, being in the same room with him makes a big difference. I know for a fact that he's committed the same amount of time and effort to be there as I have. I also know I've got his full attention for the hour. Whereas if you're on a phone call, it's too easy to get distracted by emails or a text message that's coming in. So you don't know what they're doing while you're also on the phone with them. And it also has the big advantage as well of you can see them, you can read their body language and their non-verbal communication. So you can start to understand what they're saying and how they're feeling that you just can't do over the phone. And I also found that as we had one-to-ones in different locations, so off-site one-to-ones, it has an impact on how relaxed you feel as well going into the session. And that can have an impact on what you're willing to raise as well as part of the sessions. I also made a conscious effort to try and stop and think before saying no to something, or before saying yes to something as well. To go through that ABCD method in my head, or on a piece of paper as it was initially. I found over time that the easier decisions could start to become a quite simple process in your head. And you only really need to go back to the paper and go through the full ABDC approach over the more complex things that really have a big impact, where you need to weigh up whether or not the positives outweigh the negative for you. And so as I started to get on board with the changes I've made, I'm starting to get familiar with them and I'm learning how to work with them. I looked at opportunities where I previously said no that might help me get that buzz factor back, and see if I could find a way to amplify that. And so in May of last year, I started to adapt to my new approach. And then by accident or by my manager's underhand planning, I'm not quite sure, I was asked to act as a buddy or an informal mentor to a new starter who's going to be joining our team. And I had no previous experience of this. I've never been a mentor. I've never been anybody's buddy. I've never been anybody's support system. So it was all really new. But by this time, I started to get to the point where I'm trying to look on the positives of things. So I'm trying to say yes. And so I do. So I sign up for it. And so began my journey in mentoring. And that new starter just happened to be Bilal Ahmed, the Batman and Nando's loving VCDX. And he's been with us now for nearly a year. And we still talk on a regular basis, quite often via Slack nowadays. But he has a very different personality to me. And so I actually found that I learned an awful lot from the buddy relationship. So while he was learning from me around how the day job works and silly things like how he submitted his expense reports in Concur, I found that I was learning from him as to how he approached things from a personal development point of view, how he considered whether or not to accept an opportunity, to say yes to something, to go off and learn something new. So it really helped to accelerate the changes I was already making. So I owe you an awful lot of gratitude, actually. And not long after Bilal, a second and third person joined the team, and I was asked to act as buddies for them as well. So over the next few months, and then a few Dell guys came across as part of the transition. So if Greg's still on the call, he'll know that they were assigned to each of them were assigned to a different buddy within the team. Although I don't really count them because they didn't really need any help in the same way as brand new starters to VMware did. And then a couple of weeks ago, I actually made the leap and volunteered and offered to act as a buddy for a fourth new starter who was just joining our team. And that's the first time I've actually gone off and volunteered to do it before somebody's actually asked me if I'd be willing to help. So it just shows the sort of the improvements that I've been making. And then last summer, in August as it was, so a few months after I've been through the buddy process with Bilal, I committed to what I considered at the time to be a stretch goal. And there's an internal program within VMware called the CTO Ambassadors Program. And it's quite a competitive process in terms of how you get into it. And I'd always previously just rejected the idea that it was something I could do because I didn't think I really qualified. I didn't really do anything that would make me stand out to get in. So there was never any point in bothering to apply. So I just ignored the emails as they came through that sort of told you about it. But this year, or last year as it was, as the changes I've made started to have an impact, I started to think that actually, there might be a possibility I could get in and that there was nothing to lose by actually applying for it. And so with the bit of a push from a few colleagues, I actually went ahead and I submitted my application. I decided not to be driven by the paranoia of what people might think if I applied and didn't get in, and that actually, there would be no negativity associated with it. So I submitted that application, and we then just have to wait till the end of the year before I got the results. And so by now I've picked up the bug for mentoring. I've got a few people assigned to me. And so I signed up to an external scheme through Brunel University, which is called Women in Brunel Engineering and Computing, or WEBEC for short. And they run a scheme where they pair second year engineering and computer science students or master's students with an external mentor from their chosen industry. And you work with them throughout the academic year, and they put on a series of workshops and events to help both the mentors and the mentees get together and help the mentees sort of learn skills that will help them once they get out into the wider world. And so I signed up for this and was matched off to a second year electrical engineering student, which is the same degree that I had done myself at university. But it didn't really quite go according to plan. It kind of ended up with mixed results. So it was a combination of the fact that my mentee wasn't quite sure what she wanted from the relationship. She didn't really know what she wanted to work on, and she struggled to manage her time away from just doing her university work. And then combined with the fact that I ended up on a project in the northwest of England, whereas the university is based on the outskirts of London, I wasn't really in the proximity of the university campus very often. So we didn't really get a chance to actually meet in person other than sort of the initial couple of workshops. So we never really built up that rapport. And so the relationship wasn't quite as fruitful as it probably could have been. But the scheme itself is a really good idea, and I'll definitely be volunteering again next year and looking to implement some of the stuff that I've learned from this first attempt. So after getting involved with the WeBEC scheme, it made me kind of think about how I originally got into the technology world or into the technology industry and what it was that originally got me going. And I realized that for me, it was a lot earlier. It wasn't about when I got to university or as I was thinking to go to university. I was a much younger child when I learned about the love of technology and got fascinated with things like Lego and finding out how things worked. So I started to look for opportunities of ways I might be able to get involved in helping children of a similar age group who had a similar passion for how things work or technology. And I came across a scheme called Coder Dojo, which was a free scheme that ran nationwide to help teach children, both boys and girls, how to code for free on things like Raspberry Pis. But unfortunately, it wasn't available in my local area, and I wasn't able to volunteer for it. But I discovered that my local library ran something called the Digital Den. And this was aimed at slightly younger children, being the 8 to 11-year-old age group. And it runs once a week at the local library. And it's all completely free. And it's just on a Friday afternoon after school's finished for the day. And the kids don't even need to have their own laptop. Everything's provided for them. And the idea is to get them interested in technology rather than necessarily focusing on the coding. And so they learn how to use things like microbits you see on the left of the screen. They get to play with the Ozobots, which are the little robots on the right of the screen that follow the multicolored paths. And they do different things depending on the colors of the path that they're following. And it builds up over a series of weeks. I think it's 8 weeks in total throughout the school year to lead on to them doing a bit of coding on Raspberry Pis. So it can be incredibly hard work because obviously the kids can come out of school and they're absolutely hyperactive, particularly if they've been stuck inside because it's been raining all day. But it's quite rewarding because you can be sat there helping this one, kid who's absolutely convinced that they can't do it. There's no way at the end of the session they're going to be able to get their code onto this little circuit board and get it to do what they want. And then when you actually get them at the end of that day to help transfer that code across, and they see the little smiley face appear on the microbot, and it lights up their face, and they're so satisfied with what they've done. It's an incredibly rewarding feeling. And I remember one of the kids that I helped in one of the early sessions, when his mum came to pick him up at the end of the session, he turned around to her and told her it was the best fun he'd ever had, the best fun ever. And it's just a huge buzz from helping them from that point of view. It's something you can't really describe. So that's just some of the highlights of the various things I've learned and I've got involved in over the past 12 months. And as I was looking back on the last year and pulling together this slide deck, I realized I made some huge strides and that there's actually so much more that I could have spoken about that I just didn't have time to fit into the slide deck. And so I'm definitely still a work in progress, and I probably always will be. I'm never going to be what I consider to be the perfect person or the perfect role model, but I've learned a few things along the way, and I've realized that nobody's perfect, even if they appear to be on the surface. And actually, I shouldn't be trying to compare or compete against other people, because really the only person I should compete against or compare myself to is me. I'm the only person that has exactly the same experiences as me, exactly the same challenges as me, and exactly the same personality as me. So why try to compare or compete against other people? It's not a level playing field. So there's been some highs and lows along the way. I still have my down days where I go full on cynical mode and everything is negative, but they're becoming less and less frequent. And actually, I think I recognize now when it happens. So it kind of lessens the impact of it as well. And I've realized that the highs give you that real buzz and they drive you on to go and search for that next high to keep that buzz going. And the photo on this slide is from the Octo Global Field and Industry Conference, which was in Palo Alto in February this year. And if they're still on the call, there's a couple of other people that are also in this photo. You can see me just on the right-hand end of the front row of people that are standing, what I consider to be the short person's role. And this was a result of that application, that stretch goal into the CTO Ambassadors Program, which led to an acceptance. And this was me attending my first conference in February and my first visit to Palo Alto. And as I was saying, those highs lead to other highs. So off the back of applying and getting accepted into the CTOA program, I applied to the vExpert program for the first time and got accepted. And then that led to me signing up to do these VMUG sessions as part of the conference as well. And other sessions internally as well that I'm looking at doing now. So actually going out and sharing my story or sharing my technical knowledge, something I hadn't previously thought about doing. And the conference also led to me committing to do my VCDX certification as well, ideally this year, which, as I've explained earlier, was something that I just didn't see the point of. I didn't see the benefit of in my original approach. So I've noticed now that there's more and more opportunities that appear to be opening up. And I'm pretty certain it's not that there's actually an increase. It's just that my mindset's different. Things that were originally passing me by now seem possible, now seem open to me, and are now seem worth considering. So that mindset, that growth mindset as it's sometimes called, is having an influence. And my one-to-ones with my manager are also completely unrecognizable from those fluffy sessions as well. And I can't imagine ever going back to them. So that was looking back. So what comes next? What does the future hold? Well, in my case, I don't exactly know where the road's heading, at least in the longer term. I still haven't figured out what I ultimately want to do, where I ultimately want to go. I know what that short-term goal is. I know where I'm heading. And there's positive signs from the feedback I've been getting that it's heading in the right direction. And then for me personally, I'm a lot happier now than I was 12 months ago as well. And I'm part of programs and initiatives that I could never have imagined myself applying into, let alone being accepted for. And it all started out as chasing that promotion, wanting to know what progression was about. But actually it turned into this massive journey of discovery and self-exploration and development. And it's not going to end at promotion. Promotion will just now be a tiny part of it. It will continue beyond that. There's a few things I do know. So I'm committed to try and keep in that open mindset, or the growth mindset as it's often described. I found that small changes really works for me, and I'm going to continue to look for those opportunities to improve day by day. As I say, promotion may have started the journey, but it won't be the end goal anymore. It will continue beyond that. I know I couldn't have made it this far without the support of my manager and some of my key colleagues as well, because they continue to push me to get outside of my comfort zone and to chase my goals. They dragged me out of some of the darkest days where I was just full on negative and never stopped believing in me. So I'm incredibly lucky to have had those kind of people around me. I'm also very lucky that the culture of VMware allowed me that opportunity to go off and do those non-technical training courses and to take the time out of my working day to actually volunteer as part of those digital den sessions, to figure out what gave me that buzz and amplify that buzz in my own time when actually it's no benefit from VMware. And I also now know that what I bring to VMware is more than just my work ethic. I bring a calmness and the ability to think clearly no matter how stressful the situation. I have an ability to see solutions and outcomes and different ways of achieving those outcomes. And I also hope that I now have the ability to help others find their feet and others to find their voice to fulfill their own potential. And so to end this session, I just want to leave you with a couple of things to think about. Do you really know who you are and what your strengths are? And do you know how they impact on how you work with other people? So we live in a world now where the majority of people can go off and find the answer to a technical question on most likely the first page of a Google search 8 times out of 10. So what actually is going to set you apart nowadays and make you stand out is more your personal skills than it is your technical skills. It will be how you implement those technical skills that will make the difference. So what do you actually do to invest in your personal skills? As a technical community, we spend an awful lot of time going on technical courses, getting our technical certifications, keeping our skills up to date by going and practicing in their home labs and blogging about them. So don't close yourself off to new opportunities. Don't be afraid to go and learn something new from a personal development point of view. Take the time to go and practice those skills so that you don't lose them. And don't be like me. Don't close your mind off to those new opportunities. Don't learn the hard way. Remember, it's never too late to make a start, to make a change. Also consider if that small changes approach could work for you. Is there anything that you do today that you could do just slightly better to give you that 1% difference? It doesn't even have to be something that you consider to be your weaknesses, as I identified originally. Making a change to something that's one of your strengths or on the verge of your strengths can also have a huge impact on your results. And finally, figure out your why. Figure out what it is that you love doing, why you love doing it, and find a way to amplify it. It doesn't have to be part of your day job. It doesn't even have to be technically related or technology related. Find something that you can do that will amplify that buzz, and you'll be amazed by what impact it actually has on you as an individual. So thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope that you found it interesting, and that maybe there's one or two things in there that you either recognize in yourself or in other people, or you've experienced something similar. And maybe you'll just go off and find that, you know, one or two things you'll go off and read a little bit more about. So just to leave you with the reference list of the various topics that I've gone off and read about during the past 12 months, in case anyone's interested. And that's it. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Katherine. That was really good. And to be honest, if you read...
Amazing. Well done.
If you read back through the chat, actually, I think that's probably one of the best sets of feedback we've ever had from a session. So thanks very much.
Cool.
That's really good.
Excellent job. Well done.
Thank you.
Cool.
Really brilliant.
So we've got a short break now before our next session at the top of the hour. So if you want to grab yourselves a drink and come back for Dean's session. Otherwise, we're all going to hang around here. If someone wants to have a chat about something, feel free.
Kind of don't want to follow Catherine's session now.
I feel like I've got to go and self-analyse myself.
That's what I just said. I've just said that on the chat. Good luck, Dean.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Drop the mic at the end.
Yeah.
Through that session, I was messaging people internally at work saying, "Are you free now? Join this Zoom."
Cool. I'm glad it went well.
Hey, Katherine, this is Duncan.
Excellent.
Hello.
Have you submitted this for VMworld?
No, I'm debating whether or not to do it.
Well,
Oh, I love it.
considering your PSO, and typically most PSO people are now not allowed to travel, but this is a virtual VMworld.
It is. It has
It's
crossed my
probably the
mind.
easiest way to get in.
Yeah, it has crossed my mind. It goes back to that idea of I have to debate whether or not I want to do it, whether or not I can do it. But yeah, I have considered it.
Do it here.
If you can do it here, you can do it there as well. And Amanda's
Absolutely. It's the
running
same
the track.
thing, right?
I'm pretty sure she's happy to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, you're
I'll
doing
do
it again. You can do it, right?
I can do it.
You won't be able to see all the
it.
faces then.
Yeah. It's it has crossed my mind. So I've got till the end of tomorrow to decide and submit. So yeah.
Do it right after this, Kat.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
can't do it right after
Yeah.
this. I've got to go back to my day job. I'm not
Right.
actually supposed to be on this call all day. So
Yeah, it's fine. That bit's fine. We'll sort that out. You know, Jane and I are going to be on your case, and Duncan now.
Dean is, yeah. Dean was on my case originally. Dean was on my case for CTO, so I listened to Dean. He was one of the ones who persuaded me.
And if
Excellent.
Linda and
back
I
at the wrong
can't
time,
convince you, I'll get him on the case, okay?
Yeah, true, right?
Catherine, having worked alongside you, I can't believe you're shy.
I'm incredibly shy.
Well, you're confident in your shyness.
It's a very weird thing. It's I find small talk incredibly difficult. So if you stick me in a room full of 50 people in person, it's different when it's virtual, but like 50 people in a room, even I'd say more than 4 people in a room that I don't know, I find making small talk incredibly difficult. So I'll be the quiet person in the corner. But actually, if you get me in a room full of people where, you know, we skip the small talk and we're just talking about what we're working on, talking about what we're interested in, you know, that technical side of stuff, then it becomes something completely different. So that's how the shyness comes out for me. I'm kind of introverted, but I'm more shy than introverted because I don't get kind of, I guess it's often described as sort of sensory overload if you're really introverted, that being in a room full of lots of people or around lots of people, you just have to go away and hide, or, you know, it just emotionally drains you. And I don't suffer from it from that point of view. But yeah, certainly I'm very shy. I'm very shy as a person, but it comes out in different ways.
I remember that from another V brown bag. What's her name?
Fitzhugh?
Fitzhugh,
Rebecca
thank you.
Fitzhugh? Yeah.
She's introverted, but the way she explained it to me was the difference between being introverted and extrovert is an introvert can only be an extrovert for a short length of time. It drains them, whereas an extrovert thrives off it. So we have the capability of doing this for an hour, like a talk or a presentation, but we are drained after. Yeah.
And it's one of the books I went off to read on that list is the book Quiet by Susan Cain, and it's very well explained in there. And she makes I found that book because she did, I think it was a TED Talk interview, and she's described it as small talk is her kryptonite. And that exactly describes me. If you can get past that initial sort of shyness, and it can make me seem quite intense as well, because I can't do that, you know, that polite conversation. all I can talk about is the work or something interesting to me. So I don't make the conversation very easily. So I come across as quite intense at times, but actually it's not. It's just because I don't know how to have that conversation. I really struggle with it. So she explains it very well. And the other one that's on the list about the imposter phenomenon was quite interesting as well, because I didn't know whether or not that I suffered from that. But again, that was another one that I went off to look at. And I come out very close on some of the things. I score very highly in sort of their tests, but I don't have the extreme reactions that some of it's described. So, you know, like this session, yes, you get nervous before you do it. And, you know, I spent a lot of time prepping for it. But it didn't make me, you know, physically sick. It didn't make me to the point where I couldn't sleep or anything like that in advance. And for some people, that is what they go through before they can go on stage. And then they'll look back at it and they never see that they've done anything possibly good about it. Whereas I don't have that extreme reaction. So again, it's just kind of all your different personality traits, all your experiences come out in different ways. And I think also for me, I have kind of I guess I have an armor that I wear when I go to work. So my work personality and my home personality are probably quite different as well. And it comes across in different ways. So if you only know me from, you know, being on the clock, if you like, going and doing work, I'm very different when I'm in a different setting.
Like somewhere with craft ales, you mean?
Somewhere that has cider, yeah. Yeah, alcohol does have that ability quite often. But yeah.
It's a great leveler.
It is, yeah. And Dave saying about Clifton Strengths, yeah, I've done Clifton Strengths as well. I did that as part of the Brunel University mentoring stuff. So yeah, I've got Clifton Strengths one as well. I'll have to dig out what I came out as, but I had to cut my slide deck right down. You would have had my emotional intelligence report, which isn't something I'm particularly proud of, but yeah, I couldn't fit it in I couldn't fit it in the slide deck anymore.
It's all good. I mean, at Rackspace, where I currently work, when they're hiring someone, and that's one of the first things that they get people to do, and the top 5 strengths are actually on their badge, so the key card, which is surprisingly accurate, actually. I mean, so I didn't think they would be, but it was.
Let's see if I can find what mine came out as. I don't know if I've got it on this machine because I'm on a loan machine. I remember analytical was very close at the top. See if I've got it. But most of the ones I've done, if I look back at them now, I didn't necessarily understand them at the time, but once I've sort of done more than one and they all start to tell you the same thing, it all kind of adds up. Let's see if I can find it.
Do you find your results change depending on what you've been doing?
I don't know that my results necessarily change. I think when I did my very first one, my emotional intelligence one, I look back at it now and I think I probably was very critical of myself. So I think it probably came out being worse than it should actually be, because, you know, I was in a quite a negative space. I was going very early on in the journey of learning about myself, and all I could see was kind of the negative side of me. And so you kind of put the worst version of you down on paper. So I don't know if it's necessarily changed. I kind of want to go back and do it again, because it was, I mean, coming up for 2 years ago now. So it'd probably give me a completely different result now if I did it. And it would kind of be interesting to see, because I do say that your emotional intelligence isn't static, it isn't fixed.
Myers-Briggs says you can change. Yeah, Myers-Briggs says you can change.
I can't find my Clifton Strengths.
If I do something that's completely out of my comfort zone, like standing up and presenting, I feel physically sick after presenting.
I remember you saying it, yeah, the UK VMUG.
Yeah, and so if I take a test before and afterwards, it actually, there's a big difference between what my personality comes out afterwards as before, and it's part of that expanding yourself and growing, that like pushing yourself outside your comfort zone helps. And the more I do it, the more comfortable I am. I still feel sick for some reason, but the more comfortable I am doing it.
Or less uncomfortable, rather.
Here we go. So I found it. Let's put that on the screen. So there we are. So that's my no, not that one. That's not the one I want. Where's my? Oh damn! Right, hang on. Let's stop sharing. Let's share the correct screen. There it is. Oh, come on. It's been awkward now. Just gonna have to share out my desktop. You think by now I know how to use Zoom.
Too many
every
monitors.
single day. Yeah.
Quick, let's all switch to WebEx. Said nobody ever.
Can't see any of you if we do that.
Right, there we go. So that's what mine came out as my Clifton strengths, which is actually me.
Yeah, surprisingly accurate.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, it is. I would use quite a few of those phrases to describe myself. And I wouldn't necessarily see them in a negative light now, but yeah, I'm extremely analytical. I'm very fact driven, very deliberative in what I do. I absolutely do not trust my gut. I will not make a decision lightly. Leaders as always, learner. Yep, I do like to continue to learn, desire to learn new stuff, always chasing a new goal. Responsibility, I guess so. It comes out in different ways, I think, in me. I wouldn't necessarily say that I go seeking it. But yeah, I do value very highly the honesty and loyalty side of it. And I guess I'm an arranger. I don't know. I wouldn't describe myself as being particularly organised, but maybe in my work personality I am.
Do you think it's different when you're playing football, for example?
It's interesting because that was part of my original slide deck as well. So part of my emotional intelligence stuff was actually the fact that it comes out in different ways. So I don't know if I've got my emotional intelligence report on my laptop, but there's elements of it that comes out in my playing football. So I play in defense. So my buzz comes from, making that last ditch tackle to just stop somebody scoring when it's completely unexpected. That's what gives me the buzz, and then I'll offload the ball to somebody else who's much more skillful than me, and they can go off and get the limelight scoring the goal, and I get that satisfaction from knowing that I played my part in it. So I guess it comes out in different ways, but the stuff on the emotional intelligence side probably does apply to my personal life as well. It's just different ways. As I say, I've got a slightly different personality for work than I have at home, I guess. But then I work with different people compared to what I'd say my friends outside of work are. Nobody in my circle of friends works in a technical industry. I know there's one actually, but she's a project manager. So, lots of the other people do sort of got someone who works in the border force for the government. We've got one that's a prison officer. What else have we got? You've got people that just do full-time parenting and stuff like that. So it's very different. So my friends are very different. I don't really have any friends that are still around from when I was at university, for example. So, I was the oddity going through school in terms of wanting to go for a technical career. And then I'm not really kept in touch with people from sort of past roles, apart from the few of them that now work at VMware.